On a warm July morning in 1998, 16-year-old Shawnara Mobley lay in her hospital bed, exhausted but overjoyed. Hours earlier, she had given birth to her first child, a healthy baby girl she named Kamaya. Before we move on to telling this story, we want to hear your opinion. Write to us in the comments, what is your name and where are you looking from? Your support is very important to us and helps our growing channel to develop and reach more people. Every comment, every like, every post brings us closer to creating a community that defends justice. Thank you for participating with us in this important event. The hospital room at University Medical Center in Jacksonville, Florida, was filled with warmth as family members came to celebrate, cooing over the tiny newborn swaddled in her mother's arms. Shawnara's heart was full of dreams for her daughter's future. She couldn't have imagined that within hours, her life would spiral into a nightmare. The stranger entered the room late that morning, a woman dressed in scrubs that gave her the appearance of a nurse. With a calm voice and confident demeanor, she approached Shawnara and introduced herself, explaining that she needed to take the baby for routine tests. Shawnara, fatigued and trusting, handed over her newborn. She didn't question the woman's authority, why would she? Hospitals were supposed to be safe places, and this woman seemed professional and reassuring. But Kamaya never returned. The hours dragged on, and Shawnara began to feel uneasy. When she asked a nurse about her baby, the confusion in the nurse's eyes sent a chill through her. A frantic search of the hospital ensued, but Kamaya was nowhere to be found. Security staff reviewed what little surveillance footage was available, and a horrifying truth began to take shape: Kamaya had been stolen. The stranger who had taken Kamaya left the hospital unnoticed, slipping through the cracks in security. Witnesses provided vague descriptions: a woman in her 30s, wearing glasses and a wig, but nothing definitive. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office was called, and an Amber Alert was issued for the missing infant. Detectives flooded the hospital, interviewing staff and visitors. It quickly became apparent that the abduction was meticulously planned. The woman had posed as a nurse with chilling precision, exploiting the hospital's vulnerabilities. For Shawnara, the realization was unbearable. She was inconsolable, screaming for her baby as the hospital staff tried to calm her. Family members hovered nearby, helpless in the face of such an unimaginable loss. The crib they had prepared at home now stood empty. Shawnara's joy had been replaced with grief, and the weight of guilt settled on her shoulders. Though she had done nothing wrong, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had failed to protect her child. The investigation gained national attention almost immediately. News outlets across the country broadcast Kamaya's face, a newborn captured in her first and only photos. Shawnara appeared on television, pleading for her daughter's safe return. Her tearful cries for help resonated with viewers, and the story became a rallying point for parents everywhere. Communities organized prayer vigils, and neighbors joined the search, but as days turned into weeks, hope began to dwindle. The investigation was exhaustive but frustrating. Detectives followed up on hundreds of tips, some of which came from other states, but each lead turned into a dead end. They consulted experts in criminal behavior, who suggested that the abductor might be a woman who had recently suffered a miscarriage or was unable to have children, someone desperate enough to steal a baby and raise it as her own. Yet no suspects emerged, and the case went cold. For Shawnara, every passing day was an eternity. Her life, once filled with hope, became defined by grief. Each birthday was a painful reminder of what she had lost. Though she tried to move forward, she could never truly heal. In her heart, she held on to the belief that her daughter was alive somewhere, waiting to be found. Unbeknownst to Shawnara, her instincts were correct. Kamaya Mobley was alive, growing up in a small town nearly 200 miles away. The woman who had taken her, Gloria Williams, had renamed her Alexis Manigo and was raising her as if she were her biological child. The life Kamaya knew was far removed from the anguish her family felt in Jacksonville. The truth, however, would not stay buried forever. Gloria Williams seemed, by all accounts, an ordinary woman. Born and raised in South Carolina, she was known as kind, nurturing, and deeply religious. Those who knew her would never have suspected that she was capable of a crime as cruel as abducting a newborn from a hospital. But beneath her composed exterior lay a broken woman, battling inner turmoil that would ultimately drive her to commit an unthinkable act. In the months leading up to Kamaya's abduction, Gloria's life had unraveled. She was in her mid-30s, struggling to hold together a relationship that was crumbling under financial stress and personal despair. Gloria had recently suffered a devastating miscarriage, a loss that left her emotionally shattered. The hope of motherhood, something she had clung to for years, was ripped away in an instant. In the wake of this trauma, Gloria's mental state deteriorated. She became consumed by a desperate longing for the child she had lost, a need so overpowering that it clouded her judgment. The idea of taking a baby wasn't born out of malice but from a place of desperation and delusion. Gloria convinced herself that she could fill the void in her life by pretending the tragedy hadn't happened. She began planning the abduction with chilling precision. She researched hospitals, learned their routines, and carefully chose the one she deemed most vulnerable. It was this meticulous planning that allowed her to walk into the maternity ward at University Medical Center in Jacksonville, Florida, without raising suspicion. Disguised as a nurse, Gloria blended seamlessly into her surroundings. Her calm demeanor, professional appearance, and compassionate smile disarmed anyone who might have questioned her. She approached Shawnara Mobley's room with a confidence born from weeks of preparation. To Gloria, this wasn't a crime, it was her chance at a second life, one where she could raise a child as her own and erase the pain of her miscarriage. After abducting Kamaya, Gloria fled the city, driving hundreds of miles to her hometown in South Carolina. There, she began her new life as the mother of Alexis Manigault. She carefully crafted a backstory for her daughter, telling friends and family that she had given birth to Alexis herself. Gloria lavished love and attention on the child, determined to provide her with a stable, happy upbringing. She enrolled Alexis in school, celebrated her milestones, and built a life that appeared, on the surface, to be ordinary. But Gloria's crime cast a long shadow. While she succeeded in hiding the truth for nearly 2 decades, the guilt of her actions never left her. In private moments, she must have wondered how long her secret could remain buried. Each year, as Kamaya's face appeared in news stories marking the anniversary of her disappearance, Gloria would have been reminded of the life she had stolen, and the pain she had caused to the family she left behind. Though Gloria saw herself as a mother, her actions were rooted in selfishness. Her decision to abduct Kamaya wasn't an act of love but a response to her own suffering. By taking Kamaya, she created a web of lies that would eventually unravel, exposing the damage she had done not only to Shawnara Mobley but also to Kamaya herself. For Kamaya Mobley, life as Alexis Manigault seemed ordinary. She grew up in a small, close-knit community in South Carolina, surrounded by family and friends who adored her. Gloria Williams, the woman she called Mom, provided her with a childhood that seemed typical on the surface. Alexis went to school, attended church, and participated in community events, never suspecting the secret that shaped her very existence. Despite the veneer of normalcy, there were cracks in the foundation. Gloria's overprotectiveness stood out. She avoided situations that required official documents, like registering Alexis for certain programs or obtaining a driver's license. Gloria always had an explanation: lost paperwork, bureaucratic delays, but Alexis began to sense something wasn't quite right. She dismissed these feelings, trusting the woman who had cared for her all her life. As Alexis grew older, she noticed that her life lacked certain certainties her peers enjoyed. She had no birth certificate, no social security number, no clear history. When she asked questions, Gloria would deflect, her tone firm yet loving, discouraging further probing. These moments of suspicion were fleeting, quickly overshadowed by the bond Alexis felt with Gloria. After all, Gloria had always been there for her, providing not just necessities but also emotional support. For Gloria, maintaining the illusion of a normal life was a constant balancing act. Every decision she made, from avoiding medical visits to controlling their interactions with outsiders, was calculated to keep her secret hidden. Yet Gloria ensured that Alexis's upbringing was filled with love, perhaps as a way to justify her actions. She spoiled Alexis with small luxuries, celebrated her successes, and offered unwavering encouragement. But Gloria couldn't completely shield Alexis from reality. There were no family photos from her birth or baby years. Questions about her father or extended family were met with vague or contradictory answers. Alexis occasionally wondered why her mother never seemed to speak of her own past. These doubts grew, especially during moments when her peers shared their personal histories. Life in the shadows also meant Gloria and Alexis lived with an unspoken fear. Gloria knew the clock was ticking. She had stolen Kamaya during a time when DNA testing and digital records were less common, but technology and investigative techniques were advancing. As every year passed, Gloria likely felt the weight of inevitability. For Alexis, however, these fears remained invisible. She loved her mother deeply, never imagining that the person who raised her could be responsible for such a profound betrayal. To Alexis, life was a puzzle with missing pieces, but the picture Gloria painted seemed convincing enough. For years, they lived in harmony, a mother and daughter bound by a lie so well hidden that it felt, to them, like the truth. Yet, the foundations of their world were fragile, built on stolen time. The truth, as Gloria surely knew, could only remain buried for so long. For nearly 2 decades, the case of Kamaya Mobley's abduction seemed destined to remain unsolved. Leads had dried up, and the search for the missing infant had faded into the background of cold case files. But in 2017, an unexpected tip reignited the investigation, offering a glimmer of hope to law enforcement in Kamaya's biological family. The breakthrough came when an anonymous individual contacted the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The tipster claimed that a young woman in South Carolina bore a striking resemblance to the composite sketches of Kamaya Mobley that had been circulated over the years. The claim was startling, but not unprecedented. Over the years, the Mobley case had drawn false leads from across the country. This time, however, there was something different, a name and a location tied to the claim: Alexis Manigault of Walterboro, South Carolina. Detectives began quietly investigating, combing through public records and Alexis's background. What stood out immediately was her lack of documentation: no birth certificate, no hospital records, no trace of her existence before a certain point in her life. This anomaly raised red flags and compelled authorities to dig deeper. The tipping point came when investigators uncovered Gloria Williams's connection to Alexis. By examining old witness statements, they found that Gloria had lived near the Jacksonville Hospital in 1998 and had suffered a miscarriage just before Kamaya's abduction. The timeline and circumstances were eerily aligned. With enough evidence to justify further action, law enforcement approached Alexis to collect DNA samples. When the DNA results came back, they confirmed the unthinkable: Alexis Manigault was Kamaya Mobley. Nearly 19 years after her disappearance, the stolen child had been found. The discovery sent shockwaves through Kamaya's biological family. For her parents, Shawnara Mobley and Craig Aiken, the news was a bittersweet blend of joy and heartbreak. The child they had mourned for nearly 2 decades was alive, but she had been raised by the very person who had stolen her. For law enforcement, the case had transformed from a cold investigation into an active one. Detectives turned their attention to Gloria Williams, who was promptly arrested. Gloria's double life unraveled as she was charged with kidnapping and interference with custody, bringing a long-awaited measure of accountability to the tragedy. The break in the case marked a turning point, but it was only the beginning of a complex and emotional journey for Kamaya, her biological family, and even Gloria. While the world celebrated the resolution of one of the most infamous abduction cases in modern history, those closest to the story faced the daunting challenge of reconciling nearly 2 decades of stolen time. When Kamaya Mobley's biological parents received the news that their daughter had been found alive, emotions ran high: relief, disbelief, joy, and sorrow all at once. For Shawnara Mobley, the revelation was almost too overwhelming to process. She had spent years grieving the loss of her newborn daughter, only to find that Kamaya had been alive all along. Craig Aiken, Kamaya's father, was equally overcome, but both parents understood the importance of moving forward carefully. The first meeting between Kamaya and her biological parents was arranged under the careful guidance of authorities and counselors. The reunion took place in a quiet, neutral location, free from the chaos of the media frenzy surrounding the case. When Kamaya walked into the room, Shawnara and Craig saw not the infant they had lost but a confident young woman, someone who looked like them but carried the mannerisms and personality shaped by another life entirely. Kamaya herself was caught in a whirlwind of emotion. She had learned the truth about her identity only weeks earlier, and now she was meeting the people whose lives had been forever altered by her abduction. As she stood before Shawnara and Craig, she felt a strange mix of connection and unfamiliarity. Shawnara wept openly, embracing Kamaya tightly, while Craig held back tears, letting his daughter take in the moment at her own pace. Kamaya hugged them both, but her emotions were complicated. She felt deep sympathy for the pain her biological parents had endured, but the life she had lived, the only life she knew, had been shaped by Gloria Williams, the woman she still considered her mother. Over the course of the reunion, the three began to share stories. Shawnara spoke of the day Kamaya was born and the heartache that had followed her disappearance. Craig recounted his hopes and dreams for his daughter. Kamaya, for her part, shared glimpses of the life she had lived as Alexis Manigault, careful to avoid causing further pain with her words. Despite the initial joy, the reunion underscored the immense challenges ahead. Shawnara and Craig had to grapple with the reality that they had missed nearly 2 decades of their daughter's life. Kamaya, meanwhile, struggled to reconcile her newfound identity with her loyalty and love for Gloria, despite the crimes Gloria had committed. In the days that followed, the reunion became a highly publicized event, with media outlets clamoring for interviews. But for the family, the real work began in private, building trust, navigating the complexities of their relationships, and finding a way to move forward. The reunion was not the fairy tale ending many hoped for, but it marked the first step toward healing. For Kamaya, it was a chance to connect with her roots. For Shawnara and Craig, it was a long-awaited opportunity to hold their daughter again. Together, they began the slow process of stitching together a fractured family, bound by love but shaped by loss. As the truth of Kamaya Mobley's abduction came to light, attention turned to Gloria Williams, the woman who had orchestrated the kidnapping and raised Kamaya as her own. Arrested and charged with kidnapping and interfering with custody, Gloria faced the weight of the justice system. For many, the trial was an opportunity to seek accountability for her actions. During the court proceedings, prosecutors painted a clear picture of Gloria's crime. They detailed how she had impersonated a nurse, exploited Shawnara Mobley's vulnerability, and taken an innocent baby from her parents. The defense, however, sought to humanize Gloria, arguing that her actions stemmed from desperation after a series of personal tragedies, including a miscarriage. They presented her as a woman who had loved Kamaya and had given her a stable upbringing, despite the circumstances of their relationship. Kamaya, torn between loyalty to the woman who raised her and an understanding of the gravity of Gloria's actions, was thrust into the public spotlight. She expressed love for Gloria, referring to her as "Mom," while also empathizing with her biological family's pain. Kamaya's presence at the trial was emotional, and her words during interviews underscored the complexity of her feelings. When the verdict was delivered, Gloria Williams was sentenced to 18 years in prison. For Shawnara Mobley, the sentencing was bittersweet. While she felt relief that justice had been served, no punishment could erase the years she had lost with her daughter. Craig Aiken echoed this sentiment, acknowledging the pain but expressing a hope for healing. Forgiveness became a central theme in the aftermath of the trial. Shannara struggled to reconcile her anger with the reality that Kamaya still loved the woman who had stolen her. Over time, however, she began to let go of her resentment, not for Gloria's sake, but to create space for her own healing and to rebuild a relationship with her daughter. For Kamaya, forgiveness was equally challenging. She grappled with feelings of betrayal and love, recognizing the harm Gloria had caused while cherishing the life she had been given. In time, Kamaya began to view forgiveness not as an absolution of Gloria's crimes but as a way to move forward with her life. The trial and its aftermath left a mark on all involved, but it also provided a path to healing. Gloria's sentence ensured accountability, while the process of forgiving allowed Kamaya and her biological family to start rebuilding their lives together. It was not a perfect resolution, but it was a step toward understanding, resilience, and peace. After the trial, Kamaya Mobley faced the daunting task of piecing together her identity and finding a way to move forward. Her world had been split between two families, the one that raised her and the one she had been stolen from. Straddling these two realities was an emotional balancing act, filled with moments of clarity, pain, and hope. Kamaya chose to embrace both sides of her life as best she could. While she maintained a bond with Gloria through letters and prison visits, she also began to spend more time with Shannara Mobley and Craig Aiken. These interactions were often bittersweet, filled with the joy of reconnection but also a lingering sense of what could have been. Slowly, Kamaya learned about the family she had never known, siblings, aunts, and uncles eager to welcome her home. For Shannara, moving forward was a test of patience and resilience. Years of grief had left scars that couldn't heal overnight, but reconnecting with Kamaya offered her a chance to finally start anew. They worked to rebuild their relationship, celebrating milestones together and making up for lost time in small but meaningful ways. Craig Aiken also played a pivotal role, stepping in as a source of stability and support. His calm demeanor and persistent efforts to reconnect helped ease the tension that sometimes arose as Kamaya navigated her divided loyalties. Despite her efforts, Kamaya often found herself under the weight of public scrutiny. Media attention lingered, and opinions about her decisions, particularly her continued relationship with Gloria, were polarizing. Kamaya remained steadfast in her belief that she could love both families in different ways, refusing to let others dictate how she should feel. Over time, Kamaya found solace in advocacy, using her story to raise awareness about child abductions and the emotional complexities they bring. Speaking at events and participating in interviews, she gave a voice to the silent struggles of other families impacted by similar tragedies. As the years passed, Kamaya and her biological family created new memories. Holidays and birthdays became moments of celebration rather than reminders of loss. While the shadows of the past lingered, they no longer defined their lives. Together, they found strength in their shared journey toward healing and hope. Kamaya's story is one of resilience, a testament to the human capacity for forgiveness, growth, and the pursuit of belonging. Though the scars of her past will never fully fade, her ability to forge a path forward remains an inspiring reminder that even in the face of profound tragedy, there is a way to move beyond it. The story of Kamaya Mobley is a testament to the strength of the human spirit. While her life was shaped by unimaginable circumstances, she found a way to navigate the complexities of her identity and relationships. The case remains a cautionary tale, highlighting the need for vigilance in hospitals and the lasting trauma of abduction. Kamaya's journey is ongoing, a delicate balance between the past and the future. Her story has left an indelible mark on those who followed her case, serving as both a source of heartbreak and hope.